Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I've got Noah Strackbein on from All Steelers Talk, and I want to talk to him about the potential of the George Pickens trade that died down during the draft, but is it going to stay down for long? We'll talk about that, the potential of what this offense could look like, barring the quarterback, and who gets the more touches and how does the touches get divvied up between Jaylen Warren and Kaleb Johnson, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. Go to FanDuel today to get started. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Noah Strackbein. He's back on the show. You can get his work, Sports Illustrated, All Steelers Talk. You know him, you love him. We're always happy to team up here. Noah, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It is always a good day, and to be honest with you, I never see it coming. We never start the show, and I remember here it comes. You know, this is about to be the fastest intro of all time. It gets me every time. Brightens me up, brother. Brightens me up. But I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we like to get to the content, so let's get to the content now. Noah, something that we're always, we're on the beat. We're in the facility. We're always got our ear to the ground, and there had been rumblings for some time about the potential of a George Pickens trade. Now, most recently, Diana Rossini of The Athletic was really pushing this. She was pushing out there's the potential for the George Pickens trade. There's teams calling, and she's been saying the Cowboys were calling about them, but the Steelers didn't budge. They wanted at least a second-round pick for George. The Cowboys weren't so sure, and so the Steelers were like, "No, we're not moving off this." Now, Noah, I've been talking about on my show as far as I've thought after when they signed D.K Metcalf initially, I was like, I do wonder about George Pickens. But then I asked around, I was starting to just get my bearings there, and the sense that I got was that this team is not moving on George Pickens unless someone comes in and offers a haul. And I mean, a haul doesn't have to mean like a bunch of picks, just like literally a second or a first round pick. Like they would need to offer something serious for them to come off George Pickens. And that I've even heard now that the Steelers, it would be more likely for the Steelers to sign an extension than it would be to trade him away at this point. What say you to that possibility of signing George Pickens to an extension long term?
Yeah, I mean, look I've heard a lot of the same things, and I think it was a flip. I don't know when it happened, but I do think that they went into the offseason with some open-mindedness, I would say, to move on from George Pickens. I don't want to say they were looking to trade him because I don't think that they were, but they were, open to all possibilities.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they had a revelation that they've never had in almost the history of this franchise. The Pittsburgh Steelers have never been a franchise to have two high-paid wide receivers and say, these are our guys long-term. They always, Hines stays, Plaxico goes. You could go through Antonio Brown, Mike Wallace leaves, Emmanuel Sanders leaves, Deontay Johnson leaves, and you bring in D.K Metcalf, you're thinking George Pickens leaves. But I hear you, and I've heard a lot of the same things, that it's probably slightly more likely right now that the Pittsburgh Steelers do keep George Pickens. They'd have that trade all, like you said, it's not a third-round pick. I think that's what went wrong if there were talks during the NFL draft, is it wasn't, they didn't get the offer that said, we have to make this trade. And they have the money right now where they don't have to trade George Pickens. If they want to sign him, they could. I think it comes down to not the financial side, but the commitment side, the off the field stuff, that kind of stuff. If you could calm that worry, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are, and I mean, we've said it a couple of times, are really interested in keeping George Pickens. And I think it's likely that they're gonna.
I think here's the thing here is that what Omar Khan has done, which I think is really important to what the Steelers are trying to do, he's given the Steelers options. He said like, hey, you know what? We're not rushing him out the door. So if we get a haul, we get a haul. But the whole point of this is for the Steelers to have an option for, like, let's say George Pickens blows it up this year and they're like, you know what, that guy is our wide receiver one, and we'll just pay him and Metcalf to be a super duo together. Like, what if that does work out that way? And if it does, then you got something going for you. Then you can carry it forward. And I think that's what the Steelers are. But let's say it works out the opposite way. Let's say that he is still kind of the George Pickens that can make the crazy play, but hasn't put it all together. And then you're sitting there and you're hovering around 500, and you're not sure where you're going to be this year. And then someone comes in and be like, look, we are on the cusp of a Super Bowl run. We need a star receiver. Here's a second round pick. Here's whatever for him. And then you're like, you know what? We'll make that move. But I think that's what I wouldn't put the entire idea of a trade to bed. But I think that just as equally as if he blows up this year, they sign him. He doesn't blow up, they trade him. That's also possible. I think I honestly might put it at like a 30 to 40% chance where I think it's dead even between trading and signing to an extension. And then 40% would be just letting him hit free agency and get the comp pick if that doesn't work. Well, no, I wouldn't say. Actually, here's what I'll do. I'll say that is, I'll put it like a 20, 20s, and then a 20 there, and then I'll also put like a 30% chance on a franchise tag, because that's the other option here. If they don't sign him long term, they just say, hey, George, you're about to make a lot of money this year, man. Here you go.
Yep, I agree. I think that all those that's the hardest part here is, are they going to make it into the season without signing George? Because ideally that's what they would like to do. Unless something like drastically changes, which it could, but if George shows up and he's just a totally like, I'm giving everything I got to this football team, there will be no more me showing up late to practice or showing up late to games. Like, that stuff's gone behind me. Maybe they change their mind and say, this year we'd get him cheap, because next year he's going to be more expensive. That's the biggest hurdle. But I also feel that at some point there was an understanding somewhere, and this is just a guess, to be honest, because I have no idea. But the way that everything is shifted, it kind of feels like the Steelers have some understanding George is going to be cool playing this season. He's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to risk it, and I'm going to go into the year because next year I'm going to make a boatload of money. And that's all you have to do. Like, if they could get him past training camp and into the season on the field, the rest is totally up in the air. And to be honest with you, I think at that point, the trade goes out the window. Yeah. Because they're going to look at it and say, we're not getting rid of George, but I agree. I think those percentages are pretty spot on.
I still think I'm not guaranteeing that they're signing him to an extension. I'm just saying that it is now much more of a realistic possibility than it was, I think, a few months ago. And when I look at this, I just think of the potential, and I want to talk about that in the next segment, but the potential of this offense where you have D.K Metcalf and George Pickens, as I call them, the weapons of past destruction. They're coming to tear your secondary apart. They're going to be there. But I'm telling you, man, like, Pat Freiermuth in this mix. Jaylen Warren in this mix. Then you get Kaleb Johnson in this mix. I want to talk about that with you next. What can this offense be like? What's the potential for this offense as it's currently structured? We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Noah Strackbein, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA playoffs are underway, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, you can join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if you hit on that first bet of $5 or more. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. That's for new customers when you sign up at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Noah Strackbein. Noah, let's talk about the potential of this offense. Now, I believe on your show, you guys got another nickname for the potential of D.K Metcalf and George Pickens. What's your nickname?
Yeah, we've come up with the Crash Bros, which I will say was not a me thing. I won't take credit for that. I tossed it out there. What are we going to call these guys? And I think the consensus was Crash Bros, which look at everybody could say that they can make fun of the highlights of DK and George Pickens diving on people and throwing elbows, and I love it. Like, it's the coolest meme ever, and I would embrace it if I was them 100%.
As kids who grew up in the 90s, you know, Mighty Ducks was that movie. It was that sports movie, and you had the Bash Bros, and they was just when it was time to bash, they was time to bash, and so I feel that resonates with me. I like the weapons of pass destruction, but the whole point here though is that there is a chance for this offense to be truly dynamic. Because like you said, how often has it been that the Steelers have had two dynamic playmaking outside the numbers guys at wide receiver on this roster at the same time? That doesn't always happen. You know, you think back to the days when Antonio Brown was with Martavis Bryant. They really had it good with Bryant, and Juju came along, and they had that trio cooking. But again, that was very short-lived. This is why I think an extension for George Pickens makes a lot of sense, as long as he lives up to it this year and earns it. But like, you got the chance to lock those in for the next 4 years together. DK Metcalf, a George Pickens, and then you got the rest of this offense. Pat Freiermuth's under contract right now. You've got this O-line that you've invested a lot of picks into. You're hoping that it turns into an elite unit within the next 2 to 3 years. If they're just a very good unit this year, that's a huge step up. And then you got that duo of Jaylen Warren and Kaleb Johnson. We'll get to them in the next segment. But you look at, that's a lot of playmakers. And then you still have your Calvin Austins and everything else there. I just think that, you know, they signed Robert Woods. They added, I think he's an insurance policy for if things go awry with like Roman Wilson or anyone else, or if they do make a trade, he's the veteran body that could just be in there, like Allen Robinson / Van Jefferson / whatever old guy they keep bringing in. But I think that's what the Steelers are looking at here is that's what they want to give to Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers this year, just to be like, hey, hold it down. Get it to the playmakers, let them be playmakers. And then next year, when they do go get their quarterback in the draft class, and as I talked about with Alan Saunders on yesterday's episode, go check that out if you missed it. The next year's quarterback class has the potential to have at least 4 to 6 guys that are first-round quarterbacks, legitimately, not forced, not pushing them up, not kind of hype them up like Shedeur Sanders and all these other guys, but legitimate prospects that people will be fighting over. And when that happens, you have that much more space to go get them. You don't have to go up to get the number 1 pick or the number 3 pick. You can get them at the 8th pick, the 9th pick, the 12th pick. The Steelers got Ben Roethlisberger at 11. The Chiefs got Patrick Mahomes at 10. It's possible to do that. The Texans got Deshaun Watson at 12. That hasn't worked out the same way, but, you know, highly prospective players there. There is a potential for this offense to set a tone, to set the stage easily to welcome whoever that is next year. And that's what I think is so exciting if they keep it together.
Yeah, I look at the Steelers have done everything that you're looking for them to do. They 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you go back and people are trying to avoid the term rebuild. The Steelers don't rebuild. That's not what they do. They were rebuilding. They were still winning games. They were playing fine, but they were rebuilding. Where we sit here today, they have a very young offensive line, which is, if it works out, awesome. But you have, just like you said, invested where you need to invest. You have one player, two, I guess now, in DK Metcalf, who have big second contracts, or for DK, a third contract under their belt. Like, that's it. The rest of their offense is young, but here maybe you sign George Pickens, but it's all young and growing. The defensive side of the football is the same thing. They finally found the youth movement. They finished it off with the defensive line. They'll have to get a corner and a quarterback next year. That is it. That's the only 2 positions that they need in the entire offseason. If it works, look at the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been like one piece off, and maybe 2. The one piece has always been a wide receiver 2. They've never seemed to, out after Deontay Johnson left. They just couldn't figure that out. When Deontay Johnson was there, it was a wide receiver 3. Like, they've just never been able to have that trio. And the other one's a quarterback. They've never had a quarterback. And if you could put a quarterback in here like Aaron Rodgers, or even like a Mason Rudolph, if he plays like the end of the 2022 season, 2023 season, then you have a situation where there's more weapons around him right now and a good offensive coordinator, hopefully, that he should be able to shine. Like you give them a shot. And if it's with Aaron Rodgers, that shot's pretty big if it works out. I agree with you. Like that's what they're doing here is they've set their offense up to say this year is a trial run with Aaron. See, hopefully it works. But essentially, if we had our franchise quarterback this year, he'd be in a great spot, but we're going to have another year and put him in a better spot. That's what it's going to be.
I think that's what it is. And again, this goes back to how Kevin Colbert built it up for Ben Roethlisberger.
Yes.
When they drafted Ben Roethlisberger in 2004, sure, they were coming off a 6-10 season, but they had added Jeff Hardings at center. Alan Faneca was a superstar guard. Marvell Smith on the O-line. The O-line was straight. You had Bettis. You had Hines Ward, Plaxico Burress, Antoine Randall. You had weapons galore, and you had that defense ready to destroy people on the other side of the ball with plenty of young guys up there coming there too. I just think that there is a potential for something like that for the Steelers to be there. And again, this is why I've been saying the idea of signing George Pickens. I know that there's some people out there that don't think it's a great idea and all, but this is how you invest in the offensive side of the ball. So many people say, "Oh, they only invest in the defensive side of the ball. They don't invest." Well, now here's your chance because everyone says, "Oh, this was such a defensive draft. They only drafted Kaleb Johnson. Everyone else is a D lineman." Or okay, yeah, but that second round pick went to D.K Metcalf and getting you that dog in your house. So now you're saying that you just made D.K Metcalf the highest paid receiver you've ever had. You have a chance to make George Pickens a guy in that same ilk next year. Then you are paying your offense because again, like you said, you've brought in the youth. Now you're picking which of the youth you want to keep around. That's how this develops, right? Like, the Steelers, it was unfortunate the way it played out with Stephon too, but that's why they couldn't keep Javon Hargrave was because they drafted too well at D-line between Hayward, Tuitt, and Hargrave, and they're like, we got to let one of these guys go. And if Tuitt had worked out long term, it would have been the right move. So I think that's where they're at right now is that they're looking at their guys and they're saying, hey, who wants this contract to stick around and be the big guy? Najee Harris didn't work out. So guess what? They're going to get Kaleb Johnson. Now they got him on the cheap for the next 4 years. And I think that's what these linemen are going to have to be fighting for. Like Broderick Jones, this is a big year. If he has a really good year, he's going to get paid next year. Because first he's going to get his 5th-year extension. Then he's going to get paid after that because tackles do command money when they're really good in the NFL. Yeah,
I agree. The Steelers set this up. So for the next X amount of years, it just fits perfectly where Joey Porter Jr. and Broderick Jones are up. Cool. You could pay both of those because you paid George and DK this year and TJ this year. So as those next contracts come up, it's the next run. It's the Zach Frazier, the Troy Fautanu who needs money. The Mason McCormick needs money. Then in the year after that, it's the Derek Harmon. And then boom, then it's the quarterback, and then at that point, everybody signed. You got youth at wide receiver most likely because at that point, DK's 33 years old. Like chances are you've got a new round, a new batch of wideouts coming. Like it's not going to last forever, but they've set it up to where they could keep their core there. Like if the core works out, they could keep it there throughout their rookie quarterback's contract and then some. And that's the Super Bowl window. You know what I mean? Like the Super Bowl window is you got a franchise quarterback, the team's put together. You have 5 years, before the money gets crazy. You better take advantage of it. The Steelers are set up to do that.
I think that's the big thing there is taking advantage of it, creating yourself a window. The Steelers haven't been in a window in quite some time. And I think that's the other thing about this too, Noah, is that the Steelers, this was supposed to be this era of like the tail end, like the ending Ben Roethlisberger's career and then the years afterward. This was supposed to be the dumps. This was like there were so many. I remember being around the team and hearing so many people outside people just being like, "Man, this is going to suck for the next like decade. Like they're about to hit the pits. They're about to be the Pirates." And they've never fallen to that. They've never fallen to that. And now here they are managing their way through that, making the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 years, making picks, missing picks, but nailing others. And they have a potential if they get enough things right this year. Again, priorities. That O-line got to work. This offense got to take steps up. They need some of these young defenders to mature. They need Joey Porter Jr. to be that dude at corner. They need some other guys to step up. But if they get those things that I think are very reasonable asks of players that they've invested the right kind of picks into, they could put themselves in that position where that window opens up much sooner than people ever thought it would.
Yep. Look, they are It was Kenny. Kenny would have been the one where it was very close, but probably not there.
Right.
This next guy, like, it's there. There are not enough big giant holes to say, like, okay, even if Keanu Benton never becomes like a superstar, he's good enough to say he's not a hole. If Patrick Queen and Cole Holcomb and Peyton Wilson work out to be exactly what they were last year, not the best, but not a hole. You know what I mean? You're going to have to figure the other parts out. But if Derek Harmon hits, if Troy Fautanu hits, if Mason McCormick hits, like, if all these things are there, and then you get a quarterback that hits, like, there are, you don't win the Super Bowl and say everybody on that team was dominant. There's always those like players that in a normal year don't get the recognition. In a Super Bowl year, they look like studs because everybody does. That's the Steelers, where they have the studs, they have the decent players to play good enough. And again, like, that's how you win a Super Bowl. The Steelers have put the formula together. Is it going to work? We have no idea.
Right.
Like, they can maybe go 20 years without finding their next franchise quarterback. But if the quarterback hits, they're there. Like, they've done it all.
I'm right with you there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've been talking a lot about the passing game. I want to talk about the run game and where we see how that breaks up with Jaylen Warren and now Kaleb Johnson. How do they divvy that up? Because Jaylen Warren's been waiting his turn patiently for the past few years, and now he's got it. But now he has this young man breathing down his back. We'll talk about the impact of that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Noah Strackbein. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, the online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop managing your money and start actually building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year at Monarch Money. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here with Noah Strackbein of All Steelers Talk in Sports Illustrated. Noah, let's talk about Kaleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren. Now, Jaylen Warren has been that guy that Steelers fans have been clamoring to see more of for years, since he arrived. People wanted to see more of him, and there was an excitement, and I think there still is an excitement to see what it could be like if he's the RB1. But then they draft this Kaleb Johnson guy, and you look at his tape. And by the way, I have a film study coming out on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Go to post-gazette.com to see my breakdowns as how he fits in as a zone runner, how his vision plays into things, and how the Steelers should try to use him in Arthur Smith's offense. We'll get to that a little bit in this segment as well. But Noah, how do you see the touches being divvied out between these two guys specifically? Because Jaylen Warren, to me, hit with his size, he's never been built for. I don't think he's a guy that you want to try to overwork and overload with stuff because of his size. You want to make sure if he's your lead back, he doesn't get more than 15 to 18 touches a game, and you divvy it up there. But do you think that maybe Jaylen Warren should be given that liberty to just be the bell cow for in some situations?
No, I don't think the bell cow is the way to go about this. Like, Jaylen Warren's a good running back, and I think he's got the potential to be a really good running back. I do. But I also think that the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted a third-round running back who definitely had a higher value. And they went out and they signed Kenneth Gainwell. And they're looking at this going, we don't need a bell cow running back because that's not going to work out. Like, we've done that before, and it's great. And it didn't lead to the success that we were looking for. Now they're looking at it going, okay, let's learn from this. The Pittsburgh Steelers will probably do, if I had to guess, like, Jaylen's a guy that could handle 18 touches a game, maybe 20 on a game where he's got a couple of big ones where he doesn't get touched. If you had to put percentages on it, Jaylen 55, Kaleb 40, and Kenneth of 10 to 15, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't think it's super drastic, but I do think Jaylen, for most of the season at least, is the guy. I think they want him to be the guy. They want to see if he could do all the things, because he can. Like, he could pass block, he could catch the football, he could run. Like, you're looking for him to be the dude, but you're going to keep him healthy at the same time. And I think that they want Kaleb Johnson to be the dude for the next 10 years, maybe 6-7 years, because he's a running back, but they're going to give him enough touches to kind of make that impact.
I think so too. I think that's where, if you're the Steelers, you're gonna give Jaylen Warren the chance to show what he's got. Because here's the other impact of this, right? Let's say Jaylen Warren does blow it up this year.
Yeah.
And he blows it up, but Kaleb Johnson also looks promising. That's another situation where you might be like, hey, look, Jaylen, can't afford to pay him, man. We're paying George. We got this other guy. We got this young. Go hit free agency. Go make your money. And then someone pays Jaylen Warren some good money. And then, once again, you're getting comp picks. And that's comp picks for an undrafted player.
Yes.
So I think that's kind of the likelihood of the Jaylen Warren situation, simply because I think that Kaleb Johnson could be that guy. I said this the night that they picked him. A lot of people want to compare him to Najee Harris because they're both 6'1". He's like 6 pounds lighter than Najee. And look, I see it because he runs with power. Najee runs with power. But I think that when I went back and I looked over his numbers, and this is part of the study that I did for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette too, his production in the zone is such at a proficient level that it never was for Najee. Najee was more of a power gap runner guy where tell me hit the hole, I'm gonna hit the hole hard, and I'm gonna run through somebody's face to get there. And granted, with the Steelers, he never had like a really good offensive line, so like it was kind of marred from that. But when I look at what Kaleb Johnson did at Iowa, this man averaged, I actually went back and I looked at all of the zone runs according to Sports Information Systems. It's actually 6.8 yards per carry on zone runs at Iowa. Now, granted, that's the Big Ten football. It's not the NFL. But when you look at his tape, he looks like a guy that he's looking to set up two people every time he runs the ball. It's not that when he starts his footwork to get into his run, he's doing that to set up the first guy, but he's like, all right, I've lined this guy up. Now I'm looking to line up. I've lined up the linebacker that I've been isolated for. Now I'm lining up the safety behind him, and that's my plan to cut and turn this 4 or 5 yard gain into a 20-yard gain, into a touchdown, something like that. That's where Kaleb Johnson, I think, can be a real difference maker and could make it tough to choose between him and Jaylen Warren some games.
I agree. I found myself Saturday night. Okay, I came home. My wife was past, like, not immediately, but I came home at about 9 o'clock, and by 10:30 she was in bed, like ready to go, and I was starving. You know what I mean? We're there all day long doing our thing. You're writing stories for the next day. I get home, I haven't eaten hours. I'm like, all right, I'm sitting there eating Wingstop. It's like 11 p.m. and in the pitch, it's dark. Like, it's just my phone and the like shining onto the wings. I'm eating Wingstop and watching Kaleb Johnson pitch highlights of just him taking pitches because it's so good, dude. It's so good. His vision, that's the Le'Veon Bell comparison. Everybody says, he reminds him of Le'Veon Bell. And people will be like, they're totally different running backs. They're not talking about the unique, crazy running style of Le'Veon Bell. They're talking about how good his vision was and how good he could predetermine how things were going to happen. That's Kaleb Johnson's strong suit. That's where, like, you know what I mean? Like, the Steelers wanted an explosive runner. Kaleb Johnson is not the breakaway speed guy. He's the all average 6 yards a carry, because I'll be able to see this thing better than anybody and play smart and create plays for myself. That's what the Steelers have been missing for literally since Le'Veon Bell. They've been missing that. And that's why I agree with you. Like, you're going to ride the hot hand. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season, Caleb's just too good of a player to be keeping off the field more than like 50% of the time.
Agreed. I think that's the thing, is that you want him to be that guy, because then again, like, you got him, because that's the other part of this. You'll have him under control for the next 3 years.
Yep.
So, like, you hit with Kaleb Johnson right now. You put yourself in a position where it's like, not only like, because I have to say, I've been one of the people, anyone that watches me knows, I was much higher on Najee Harris than most people. And I thought it would be silly to not pay him $6.7 million to just know, hey, you got a solid running back, your run game. And it's just for another year, just give him that 5th-year extension. And then if you want to draft a running back, you can, and that's your future. If not, then you can invest that extra pick into a receiver, into a corner, into something else that you do need to figure out a better answer at. But getting a Kaleb Johnson in the third, I didn't think he'd be there in the third. I thought that it's just like this really, I think this does work out. Now we need to see him actually play. We can't just crown him immediately as the guy. But I see that potential there. And again, there's a building natural excitement for the Steelers offense. Again, still need a quarterback, still need to figure who that is. But like, it used to be like, hey, you know what? The pass game is the only thing that's going to be able to hurt us today, or the run game is the only thing that's going to be able to hurt us today if they're the defense. If you look at this roster and they get a quarterback, if Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph, whoever it is, can just get the ball to those two guys in front in good spots and let them be playmakers, and then you have that O-line develop, there's a chance for defense to be like, all right, we actually do have to really put in a lot of work to plan for this Steelers offense because they can hurt us in so many different ways. Yeah,
this is the best Steelers offense that they've had since I don't even know. I think it's even before Marquise Pouncey's last year, the Steelers offense was still pretty decent. I think the year before that, it was good, but like, this is the best Steelers offense on paper that you've had in 10 years, maybe like 7 years, something around that mark. And again, it's got to all work out. The offensive line's the make or break here. Like, we could talk Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph, super important pieces to this. If the offensive line stinks, the offense is done. It's not going to be able to do anything. But if that clicks, I think this is the best Steelers offense they've had in years. And like the first one in recent memory that you think of as like an actual threat to make massive impact in a game.
Agreed. I think that's a big thing. If they get that, they become so much more dangerous of a team. And if the defense, even if the defense just stays where it's at right now, that is still a problem for you to handle. And having that balance, that's the stuff that can make you a serious threat to be a dangerous team, and even maybe be a threat to go, win playoff games and be a Super Bowl threat if things. But again, they need that quarterback position to work out. We'll see how that plays out. Aaron Rodgers still has not signed as of recording the show. Granted, I guarantee you, we're recording at 7:07 p.m. on Tuesday evening. I swear to God, if we finish this show and he signs with the Steelers at 7:15, I will crash out. So I will be a crash bros. I will be a weapons of past destruction because I will not be able to take it. But in all seriousness, there's a real potential there that I think is more tangible than, like, to your point, has been since 2020.
Yes. Yeah. And I think people will talk Aaron Rodgers and say he doesn't want to come to the Steelers. Why would he want to come to the Steelers? Look, the Steelers are not the Minnesota Vikings, okay? But they're not a bad football team, and they're a much better football team if you look at it on paper and say, Aaron Rodgers is going to look at this and say, I'm better than Russell Wilson. I could do more with Russell Wilson. And Van Jefferson isn't my wide receiver too. George Pickens is, like D.K Metcalf's here. I have guys like they're going to look at it. There's reason to feel good about this Steelers team. And if Aaron Rodgers signs by tomorrow morning, we'll just be doing I'll be eating Wingstop instead of watching highlights. We'll be talking Pittsburgh Steelers. That's all we'll be doing. There'll be no worries there.
Absolutely. Noah, thank you so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it as always. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Noah Strackbein. You can check out the podcast All Steelers Talk on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. And then you can find all my written work at si.com/NFL/Steelers.
Absolutely. He's Noah Strackbein. I'm Chris Carter. Thank you, Noah, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here at the Locked On Steelers podcast. As always, you can tune into the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content like we had last night over the Robert Woods signing. Go check that out. I did address it. Not a big deal, which is why we're not harking on it too much, but we did address it. You can also read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. I recently did a film study on Kaleb Johnson and what he's going to bring as a zone runner in Arthur Smith's scheme. Check that out there for the written work. Check back here tomorrow for another episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast covering your Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see you then.